but she really wanted to go, and so I relented, and we left. We had a great time, and spent nearly the whole weekend on the beach, sipping tropical drinks and just breathing in the ocean air. When we got home, though, both of us nearly had heart attacks when we saw our backyard. Our fence along the side of the yard that we shared with Ralph was knocked over, and all the plants between the fence and our pool were ripped out and scattered around the yard. And I don't know how they did it, but they emptied our pool and filled it with garbage. It smelled so bad that I nearly vomited. I was so angry that went out into the garage and was going to get my baseball bat and do something with it when my wife stepped in front of me and told me to calm down. Hi there, my name is Anthony, and I had the worst possible neighbor you could imagine. Now, I may have gone a bit overboard with getting retaliation. I'm usually a very calm and easygoing person, but I was pushed beyond my limits. Here, let me explain what happened, and then you'll understand what I mean. I have been living in the same house for over a decade now, and about 6 years ago, my neighbor Ralph and his family moved into the house next door. Ralph and I got along fairly well, but his teenage sons Bobby and Teddy were very unruly. They would constantly do crazy things like ride their bikes through my front yard and rip up my yard. That, or they would have pool parties with a bunch of their friends and would drink even though they were underage. There was one party in particular where they had over 24 people over and partied until 5 in the morning. They were being so loud that I got nearly no sleep at all. I was tempted to call the police, but I chose to speak with Ralph and maybe appeal to his good nature. I figured that if I called the police that it might just make for some bad blood between our families, and rather than poking that bear. I waited until Ralph came back so I could speak with him. Hey there, Ralph. I hate to be that kind of neighbor, but your sons went a bit overboard the other night.
Yeah, they made quite a mess. I guess they were just blowing off some steam.
Okay, but I had to work the next day, and they kept me awake the whole night. And they made a mess on my side of the fence even.
Well, yeah, you know how it is. Boys will be boys.
Ralph, with all due respect, that really isn't good enough. There were dozens of beer cans in my yard and they got sick in my bushes. Ralph, can you please have a word with them and try to get them not to be so rowdy next time?
Honestly, they really weren't that bad. Maybe you should just not be such a stick in the mud and just mind your own business.
His responses were not even remotely acceptable, but all I could do was hope that he would see reason, and that if the boys had another party, that they would be more aware of not being so loud the next time, at the very least. Sadly, that wasn't the case. Literally a month later, Ralph and his wife left to go away for a weekend, and I knew that his sons would definitely have a party that night. As the day went on, Ralph's sons' friends began to show up. My wife and I were swimming in our own pool in our backyard, when suddenly some teenage boys were leering over the fence at my wife and calling her all kinds of lewd names. Wow, check out the body on her.
Yeah, she's my type for sure. Hey there, beautiful. Why don't you come over here and have a drink with us?
Yeah, wow. Maybe you could take your top off at the very least. Both my wife and I were disgusted, and so we went inside. We figured that, at the very least, it would be quieter, and with any luck, that later, closer to bedtime, that they would quiet down. As midnight came around, though, they were extremely loud. Once again, I was tempted to call the police, but didn't until 1 a.m. when we heard people in our backyard. There were so many people next door that several of them spilled over into our yard and were swimming in it. As soon as I saw them in my pool, that was the last straw. I called the police right away, and a few minutes later they showed up. When the sirens and lights were going off, the teenagers dispersed and ran in dozens of directions, and the police gave chase. A few minutes later, it was quiet, and my wife and I breathed a heavy sigh of relief. In the morning, we went outside and found our backyard a complete mess. There were bags of garbage in our pool and beer cans everywhere. A large word was carved into the hood of our car that read, "Snitch." It was carved with keys, I think. When Ralph came back, I stormed over and told him that he needed to do something about his sons, or else I would call the police on them from now on. It was not well received. "Ralph, this has got to stop. Your sons are out of control."
I don't care what they did. How dare you call the police on them? My boys spent the night in jail because of you.
As they should. They are underage, drinking, and they trespassed onto my property and were swimming in my pool. They even left garbage in it and keyed my car. Ralph, how dare you defend them?
I don't give a damn about your car. I demand you apologize for getting them arrested.
Both of us were seeing red, and before I knew it, We were shoving one another, and then Ralph threw the first punch, and we were on the ground rolling around, punching and kicking one another. Our wives had to pull us away from one another in order to get us to stop. We were like animals. Months passed, though, without incident. I could only assume that Bobby and Teddy were laying low so that they wouldn't get in trouble from the police. But I also knew that it was only a matter of time before Ralph left once again for a weekend away and the boys would misbehave. However, nothing happened, and my wife and I thought that maybe the last party had been just what was needed to get some sense into those boys' heads. On a whim, my wife suggested that maybe we should go away for a weekend. I was hesitant, but she really wanted to go, and so I relented, and we left. We had a great time, and spent nearly the whole weekend on the beach, sipping tropical drinks and just breathing in the ocean air. When we got home, though, both of us nearly had heart attacks when we saw our backyard. Our fence along the side of the yard that we shared with Ralph was knocked over, and all the plants between the fence and our pool were ripped out and scattered around the yard. And I don't know how they did it, but they emptied our pool and filled it with garbage. It smelled so bad that I nearly vomited. I was so angry that went out into the garage and was going to get my baseball bat and do something with it when my wife stepped in front of me and told me to calm down. We ended up calling the police, but when they came out, they told us that there wasn't anything that they could do as there were no witnesses. They simply couldn't prove who it was that had done the damage and vandalism. It was then that I planned out my revenge. I went and got a bunch of supplies that I would need for my plan, and I waited until Ralph would go away. I didn't have to wait long, and as soon as I saw him pull out of his driveway and drive off, I went into action. Ralph always left very early in the morning for his weekend trips, while his sons always slept in nearly to noon. And so I used the morning to set up my revenge as quietly as I could. I had bought a liquid blue dye that I added to their pool in enough quantities that it wouldn't be obvious that it was there until someone jumped into the pool. I then snuck into their house through the back door and dumped rotten eggs throughout the house. I had been saving them in my garage in an airtight container and with my nose plugged and a mask on. I hid them throughout Ralph's house. I honestly don't know how Robbie and Teddy slept through it, but I got in and out without them noticing, and then I disposed of supplies I used and sat back in my own backyard and waited. After a couple hours, the two boys ran out of the house desperately gagging and looking for fresh air. Neither knew what was wrong with their house, but they weren't going to let a smelly house ruin their party, and so they called up their friends and told them to still come over. Once there were about a dozen people, they all jumped into the pool and began splashing around. As soon as I knew they were in the pool, I snuck around to the front of the house and removed the valve stems from every tire of every car in the driveway, flattening all of the tires, and then went back inside my house to watch the carnage unfold. It didn't take long for people to realize that the pool was turning their skin blue, and while some tried to rush into the house to wash it off, others tried to go to their cars to drive home and wash it off there. Those that ran inside quickly ran right back out, and those that had tried to use their cars were also frustrated, and they returned to stand by the pool. None of them knew what to do, and as the sun set, none of them had come up with a plan. They ended up sleeping in the backyard that night, but the kicker was that around 10 at night, a wild thunderstorm rolled in and drenched all of them in cold rain. By the time the morning came, there were dozens of blue teenagers that sat around Ralph's pool crying and miserable and unsure what to do. It was then that Ralph came home, and he and his wife saw all the cars in their driveway and went around out back to see why the party was still going. The boys told them everything that had happened, and Ralph knew instantly that I had a hand in it, and so he called the police. Much like I had experienced, though, they told him that there wasn't anything that they could do as there were no witnesses. 2 days later, there was a for sale sign on their front yard. I heard through other neighbors that they had tried to get rid of the rotten egg smell, but couldn't. They had even hired professional cleaners, and they could not get rid of the smell. They really didn't have much of a choice, and so they chose to sell. After a couple of weeks, they found a buyer, but because of the smell, they lost a lot of money on the sale. The new owner had pretty much given them less than half of what the house was actually worth, and so they moved away. Bobby and Teddy were both stained blue from head to toe for months on end. I know this because I saw them more than once completely blue. Ralph and his wife ended up buying a house on the opposite side of town, and I was very happy. We passed by each other from time to time, But thankfully, I never had to deal with Ralph or his sons ever again. So maybe I went a bit too far, but after what they had put us through. I'm just grateful that they caved in and sold their house as quickly as they did. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.
It took the convincing of the family members to get my parents to agree to keep me. Everyone knew I wasn't loved or wanted by my parents, and it was my worst experience while growing up. Whenever I had fights with my cousins, they always yelled about how my parents hated me. My parents weren't helping matters either. They would go for family gatherings and parties with just my brother. When people asked about me, my father would say,
"Why should we care? She should watch over the house. We didn't ask the universe for her."
I managed to grow up in the midst of such discrimination. Two years ago, my parents disowned me. Was it sad for me? Not in any imagination. I was filled with happiness when they did. My name is Raina, and I'm 25 years old. I was born into a family where the male child was valued the most, and it wasn't even hidden. My elder brother Jude was born 3 years before me. According to what I was told by my elder cousins, my parents didn't want me when they discovered my gender. It took the convincing of the family members to get my parents to agree to keep me. Everyone knew I wasn't loved or wanted by my parents, and it was my worst experience while growing up. Whenever I had fights with my cousins, they always yelled about how my parents hated me. My parents weren't helping matters either. They would go for family gatherings and parties with just my brother. When people asked about me, my father would say,
"Why should we care? She should watch over the house. We didn't ask the universe for her."
I managed to grow up in the midst of such discrimination. My brother wasn't intelligent, so he didn't do well at school. He finished his high school education 2 years before me, but because he couldn't get into college as a result of failing the entrance exams continuously, I got into college before him. My father was jealous of that. As a result, he asked me to drop out of school.
"You have to leave school. Jude is a man. He should be in college first."
But he can't get in. He's not brilliant and can't pass the entrance exams. I passed, so why should I drop out because of him?
How dare you think you have the right to question my decisions? Who do you think you are?
Wow. Unwanted children should soak in depression, not be confident.
Usually, in cases like this, the mother supported the girl child who was unloved. But my mother was a different person. She would agree to every word my father uttered. To her, too, a girl child was useless. Once, when I'd accidentally broken a plate, she told me how she hated me.
I regret birthing you. I hate you so much, you stupid child. The other women have only boy children. Why were you given to me? How dare you break my plate?
It was just a plate. I wondered why she said so many hurtful things. When my father returned home that night, she reported to him and made sure he disciplined me through beating. So, when she called me an unwanted child that day, I wasn't surprised. I insisted on not dropping out for my brother.
Well, if you won't drop out, pay your fees yourself.
Pay everything yourself, stupid child.
I had no idea where I would get the money to pay, but I boasted that I'll find my way without them. Fortunately for me, 2 days later, a scholarship program was announced. I immediately hopped on it and requested to take the exam. I knew I was very intelligent, so I was sure of securing a spot. However, a twist happened when it was suddenly announced that only 2 people would be picked from my college, instead of the initial 10 that was said in the announcement. I was worried throughout the week. My college was known for breeding very brilliant students. I knew it would be a huge competition. Since they were only going to pick 2 people, I decided to forget about being among those 2. How on earth was I going to beat the numerous brilliant ones to win a spot? I was shocked when 2 days later, I was informed that I was the first of the 2 students who were picked for the scholarship. I was surprised. It was all like a dream until I signed the agreement to be sponsored throughout my college education. I burst into tears afterward, unable to contain my emotions. When I got home and announced the news to my parents, I could see the jealousy in their eyes.
Should that make us happy? Is it new to you that we don't care about whatever happens in your life?
Our son can't pass his entrance exams, and you managed to pass and even get a scholarship. Don't you think it's insensitive of you to tell us about that?
Insensitive? I couldn't understand how it could be termed insensitive to share good news. Anyway, I retired to my room that night. 2 weeks later, my parents came to me with a strange request.
We were thinking about going to your school first, but Jude thought it would be better to speak to you first.
Why? Is there a problem?
Well, I'm going to be straight with you. Your father and I want you to give up the scholarship for your brother.
We think he deserves it. We plan to borrow some money. We're going to use that to sponsor you ourselves.
I knew the exact reason they requested that. My parents love to boast. If my brother got the scholarship, it would be a great honor to them. However, I got it instead. My parents can't tell anyone that their unwanted child had the scholarship, so they thought of a better way to boast with it, and that came up. Well, I'm sorry, but it's impossible to do that. Jude isn't brilliant to start. Secondly, it's impossible to give my scholarship to him.
Who are you to say that? We're going to your school to confirm. Fool.
We'll go to the college ourselves to make the request. It was a mistake coming to you.
True to their words, they were at my school the next day to request a switch. To their disappointment, they were given the same response. It was impossible to switch the spots. My parents went home disappointed and pissed at me because the school's president praised me for being a great student. Surprisingly, 2 months later, Jude suddenly got admitted into my college. I had no idea how that happened, but he did. Even worse, the few cousins who still found me worthy told me about my parents boasting about my brother's supposed scholarship into my school. I was confused, but I brushed it off. I also didn't think about how he got in anymore. All I was focused on was how to maintain my scholarship. I managed to scale through college. Throughout our years of being in college, not everyone knew we were siblings. My brother ignored me like I was a plague. He also was known for spending lavishly. We weren't wealthy, but we were doing well. However, with our status, my brother wasn't supposed to have that luxury. In his second year, my parents got him a car. I was shocked. All I could think of was where and how they got the money. As if my brother's case wasn't enough, my parents were also spending insanely from the moment my brother got into college. They went on vacations, shoppings, and even bought unnecessary things. Of course, I wasn't given the luxury. On my graduation, my parents bought me a dress worth $8,000. According to them, they'd kept that money aside to surprise me on my graduation. I couldn't believe my ears. Seeing my parents smiling at me and speaking to me softly was scary. However, with a little more affection at my graduation, I thought it would be fair to accept them. I concluded that they were sorry about their actions and that was the best way they could think of an apology. However, to my utmost shock, they returned to their old ways immediately after my graduation. I was disappointed. Nevertheless, I went on with my life. I managed to secure a well-paying job 2 months later. Of course, my parents knew about it. I was confused when, 3 months later, I got a call from a student loan organization requesting to see me in their office. I was curious and confused, so I honored their call the next day. On getting there, I was asked how I was going to pay my loan. Loan? What loan? I never took any loan. You can imagine my surprise when I was informed that my parents took a student loan of $250,000 in my name 4 years ago. They'd lied about them not being able to afford my fees and promised to pay the loan once I got a job. I was also told that my parents had called them to inform them that I'd gotten a job and it was time to take the loan from me. Furious, I left the office and went straight home. How could you both do this to me? Where do you expect me to get $250,000? You could have aborted me if you didn't want me, rather than put me through pain all my life. I knew the money they'd been lavishly spending since Jude got into college was the loan they took. They didn't use it for me. How could they lie?
Well, have you forgotten so soon that we spent $10,000 on you for your graduation?
Oh, that? I'll pay for that. But I will not pay the rest of the loan. Never! I left the house, ignoring their threats, and headed back to the loan company. I explained everything to them and made them know I was only going to pay for the $8,000 they spent on me. The loan company refused and asked that we settle our difference and decide who would pay. I knew things weren't going to go well in that situation, so I got myself a lawyer and we filed a case against my parents. They were furious when they found out.
How dare you file a case against your own parents, you evil child?
Well, how dare you take such a huge amount of loan in the name of your own just for the sake of your favorite child? I'm human too. Do you think I don't feel bad about how you both treat me?
Well, if you feel bad, leave our lives.
Yes, take your unfortunate self out of our lives.
If you're finding it hard to do that, I'll make it easy. Henceforth, you cease to be my child. You don't belong to this family anymore.
Well, thank you. I never did anyway. With that, I stormed out. The case got into court, and after about a week, it was decided that my parents would pay their share while I pay my $10,000. I got myself a comfortable apartment and moved out of their house. My parents had to sell their house and move to a smaller one to pay half of the loan. Jude quit college. Apparently, my parents had bribed his way in and were also paying to promote him. Since there was no money anymore, he was forced to get a menial job. Meanwhile, my mom got a job as a nanny, where she earned $200 per month, and my dad got a job as a security guard. From what I hear, Thief beat the hell out of him one night and even broke his leg. Every month, the loan company took 99% of their salaries, leaving them to feed on peanuts. Until the remaining $230,000 was paid, they would have to work their ass out. I was able to pay mine after a year, and I'm a free lady now, enjoying the fun of life without my parents and brother. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.
There was one match that I lost so badly against the other opponent that Coach Stevens got so mad and wanted to humiliate me. He made me do 250 push-ups, and with the whole team and the opposing team watching, he screamed that I wasn't doing them fast enough and kicked me in the side. Everyone gasped as they heard a loud crack from my ribs. He looked around the room, not at all concerned.
I heard that crack the same as all of you, but he's not going anywhere until he finishes his set of push-ups.
Having broken ribs made me doing the push-ups incredibly difficult and painful to do. I don't even remember how I got through it. The next thing I remember was being in the school nurse's office, with the rest of the team surrounding me. Hey, my name is Milo, and this is the story about how me and my best friend got revenge on our crazy and abusive gym teacher. When Jack and I were looking around for universities, we were looking for ones that had a really good boxing team. We were both really passionate about the sport and wanted to go pro after we graduated. We were on the same team in high school. That's how we met each other and became best friends. When we both got accepted into the college with the best boxing team in the state, we thought our dreams had came true. That couldn't be further from the truth. Hey, did you see who the head coach is for the school that we just got into? It's Stephen Mackinson. The Stephen Mackinson? The 3-time state boxing champion? That's amazing. He must be a great coach. He's a great coach, but he's also the worst. People have been complaining about him for years, but the school won't get rid of him. At the time, we thought that the student might have just been jealous of us and wanted to freak us out. The boxing program was extremely competitive to get into, but we both managed to get accepted. We only had to see him with our own eyes to find out how much that student was right about the coach. On the first day of practice, Coach Stevens lined up all the players based on their weight. Boxing's a sport that's heavily influenced on your size, and weight classes mattered. He lined up the skinnier boys to the left, like Jack, and the heftier guys, like me, on the right.
Listen up, I've been coaching at this school for 15 years. I am known for creating the best boxers in the state. My methods may not be liked by everyone, but they work.
As he spoke, he threw rice on the floor in front of the students on the left. The boxers started to murmur in confusion, but stayed still as the coach continued to scream at the team.
The most important thing in this sport is using your size to your advantage. Now, most of you here are either too skinny or too fat, so we're going to fix that first. You skinny boys here are going to eat rice every day until you get more meat on your bones. You fatties over there are going to be running laps around the track and work off some of that whale blubber.
We all stood there in disbelief. Was he serious? He saw that we thought he was joking, blew his whistle, and screamed,
"Do it now, or I'm revoking your boxing scholarships."
With that, everyone started to move into action. No one could afford to be here without a scholarship. It was such an expensive school. I looked over and saw Jack hurrying to eat as much rice as he could off the dirty floor. I was brought outside with the rest of the bigger players, and we ran laps around the track until we lost our breakfast from that morning. What the heck? This was the best coach in the state? This isn't training us to be better at boxing. This is treating us like animals. When practice was over and the coach left, we sat and talked in the gym as a team about what just happened. Like me, everyone on the team was a freshman to the school. This was their first experience with Coach Stevens.
The coach is taking this too far, right? Why hasn't anyone reported him?
He might be, but he does have a history of making players really good boxers. But this is insane. This can't be legal. How can the school know he's this horrible and keep him anyways?
They don't care about the players. They care about the games that they win. The head of the school has been protecting him for years, I've heard, making evidence of his abuse magically disappear. It's how they keep their place as the best boxing college in the state.
I did my best to convince everyone that we had to fight against our coach and figure out a way to make him stop, but everyone was too afraid of him. They had all worked really hard to get into the school and didn't want to lose their scholarships. Some even thought that his abuse was the only way that they could become better wrestlers and wanted to stick it out. I wanted to quit, but I didn't want to leave Jack there by himself. I knew how important boxing was for him and how important it was that I stayed by his side. Boxing was important to me too, but being around Coach Stevens made me start to hate the sport. I decided that I would stay on the team, only for Jack. Out of everyone on the team, I was the biggest player. It's always a power move for someone to try to take down the biggest guy in the room to assert his dominance, so the coach singled me out a lot. I got the worst of his torment out of everyone else. He would make me come in before the other players and do physical training from sunrise until sunset. My body was so exhausted from everything that he made me do that I couldn't even focus on my studies anymore, much less do well in my boxing matches. There was one match that I lost so badly against the other opponent that Coach Stevens got so mad and wanted to humiliate me. He made me do 250 push-ups, and with the whole team and the opposing team watching, he screamed that I wasn't doing them fast enough and kicked me in the side. Everyone gasped as they heard a loud crack from my ribs. He looked around the room, not at all concerned.
I heard that crack the same as all of you, but he's not going anywhere until he finishes his set of push-ups.
Having broken ribs made me doing the push-ups incredibly difficult and painful to do. I don't even remember how I got through it. The next thing I remember was being in the school nurse's office, with the rest of the team surrounding me. Oh my gosh, Milo, are you okay? You were right. Coach Stevens is an absolute maniac. We need to do something drastic if we're ever going to get rid of him.
The school is no help. They're too happy with how well his team is doing in boxing.
So what happens if the teams do poorly then? That was how we hatched the plan to purposely lose all of our matches. We agreed as a team to do it together. Even though a lot of the players were reliant on their boxing scholarships for school, we decided that getting rid of Coach Stevens was more important. Who knows how many other players' bones he would break? We were the only ones who could do anything to stop him. We talked with the other boxing teams that he coached, and with some convincing, they agreed to lose their matches too. We're so tired of him mistreating us like animals, they yelled. So for the rest of the year, we all lost all of our matches. Stevens became so angry with us at first and thought that he could bully and abuse us into winning again. His training became even more brutal. Some of it wasn't even training at all, but just him attacking us out of anger. We anticipated this and planted hidden cameras throughout the gym to have evidence of his abuse. We even went to the head of the school and told him about what was happening, and he waved us away, confiscating our tapes.
I will make sure that this makes its way to the police.
We expected as much, and filmed him hiding the tapes and having a conversation with Stevens after he thought we had left.
I could let this kind of behavior slide before when you were winning us matches. But now, I don't know what's happening. I haven't changed anything about what I usually do to make winners. But they're all just losing. I've tried everything. Well, you need to figure something out, and quick, or else I'm going to make sure that you don't teach anywhere else ever again. I saved all that evidence of you beating students over the years. It didn't magically go away. I have all of it. I have all of...
After this meeting with the head of the school, it dawned on him that we were losing on purpose to make him lose his job. He began to panic and pleaded with us.
Look, if you guys don't win your next boxing tournament, I'm going to get fired. I know I was a little rough on you, but I need this job. No one else will hire me because they know how I coach my players. This is the only school I've been able to work at in years. Please.
We began to laugh at him. We didn't have any pity for someone who was down on his luck after all he had done to us. He was finally reaping what he sowed after treating us like animals. All those early mornings of running until I threw up, or Jack being forced to eat rice from the floor until he got sick, or him beating other students were finally coming to an end. So many of us will have permanent reminders of his coaching, like me and my rib, that never healed right after he cracked it. We walked out of the gym, leaving him begging and crying alone. We were finally getting our revenge on this man who had ruined so many lives. After we lost the last match of the season, the university fired Coach Stevens. The head of the school couldn't justify protecting him from the police anymore. The school's ranking had gone down, and they were officially the worst boxing school in the state. As soon as they gave him the boot, all of us wrestling players marched down to the police office and showed them the footage that we had of him physically attacking other students, as well as evidence of the head of the school hiding the coach's abuse from the police. Coach Stevens' wife left him after she found out how horribly he had been treating us and divorced him. The head of the school was attacked by a mob of angry parents and had to go to the hospital. They were both arrested and sent to prison, but they weren't safe there either. The story of their corruption was on all the news channels, and the word quickly spread, even into the prison. They were attacked by their fellow inmates, and now live in a state of constant fear for their lives. The school founder was horrified with what had been happening under his nose, and offered to pay for all of the expenses that we needed to recover from what Stevens had done to us. Paying for therapy, for our medical bills, and even paying for the rest of our college education. Sometimes it pays to play the long game when it comes to revenge. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more stories. The second that the shock wore off, Tyler lunged at me and tried to beat me up, but I was no longer just a weak boy, and while he had gotten himself an office job. I had gotten a job in a factory and was in much better shape. It didn't take much for me to overpower him and to punch him so hard that it knocked him unconscious. During the scuffle, Claire ran out of the house in tears. After the fight ended, I knew that my parents would kick me out anyways after that, so I went straight to my room and packed all of my belongings up and left. Hey there, my name is Jared, and just listen till the end of my story. I doubt that you'll think very highly of me once I've completed my story, but I hope that you will at least think that maybe I'm not entirely in the wrong. So let's start off with saying that my family is pretty rotten. My parents have always pit my brother Tyler and I against one another. They seem to thrive on watching us compete for their love. It was rather exhausting, to be honest. Hey, Mom and Dad. I got a B+ on my latest math test. Well, I got an A+ on my latest math test. Not sure why you think your measly B is something to be proud of.
Tyler is right, Jared. Looks like you need to try harder.
As if Jared is such an idiot. I'm amazed that he could even get a B at all. They would constantly measure our achievements against what the other could do. Eventually, I got bored of trying to constantly compete and just decided to stop. Instead, I just focused on working on myself and trying to figure things out on my own. As a result, I think that Tyler ended up being a lot closer to our parents than I did. On Tyler's birthday, my parents will get him lots of gifts, including the latest iPhones, whereas on my birthday, if I'm lucky, I will get a home-baked cake from Mom. Often enough, I felt like an outsider in my own family, but it was either that or constantly fight and participate in games for affection and attention, and I really had no interest in that. Since Tyler is older, he left the house first and went off to school and ended up getting a decent job once he graduated, and so he moved into his own apartment. For me, I had decided to go to a local college when I came of age. However, I had a really hard time finding a job, and so I've been living at home while I've saved up enough money to finally be able to afford a place of my own. Then one day, my brother brought home this beautiful woman. Her name was Claire, and the second she walked through the door and greeted my parents and I was incredibly attracted to her. But of course, I kept this to myself, since she was my brother's girlfriend, and I wasn't going to do anything that would jeopardize their relationship. However, as my brother introduced her, I got the feeling that maybe they weren't a very good fit for one another. Hey guys, this is Claire.
It's very nice to meet all of you.
It's very nice to meet you as well.
Tyler has told me so much about you guys, and I just hope...
Okay, that's enough, babe. Hey Dad, did you watch that game last night? If it happened once, even twice, then I could just overlook it as my brother being a bit too excited to introduce us to this new girlfriend. but he constantly interrupted her. It was like he didn't want to give her a chance to talk. It bothered me greatly, but it really wasn't my place to judge their relationship. I suppose it would have bothered me less if the little that I did get to speak to Claire. I found out that we had so much in common. We liked the same movies, music, and even both enjoyed seeing plays and musicals. Something that Tyler absolutely hated. I think I could have spoken to her for hours about plays, but the time came, and the two of them left for the night. A week later, I went to visit my brother and bring him some cookies that our mom baked for him, and when I arrived at their home, Claire answered the door. Instantly, my heart dropped as I noticed that she had a fat lip and a black eye. "Hey Claire, how did you get hurt?"
Oh, this? Well, I fell down some stairs. I can be very clumsy.
"What stairs? You guys live in a bungalow. You don't have stairs."
Oh, well, they were at work.
"Claire, those wounds look fresh, and it's Sunday. You had Saturday off from work. Did Tyler do this?" Her expression told me that he had, but she was incredibly reluctant to say anything. Until I reached out and held her hand in mine. I did my best to have an expression that told her that she could tell me anything and I wouldn't judge.
Yes. But he didn't mean to. He was just really upset and wasn't really thinking about what he was doing. He swears that it won't happen again.
Do you want me to speak with him?
No. No, please. He swore it would never happen again, and I believe him. Plus, it's probably my fault since I nag him sometimes.
I was so incredibly angry, but I respected her wishes and didn't say anything, although I very much wanted to go and beat him up for hurting such an amazing woman. He truly did not deserve her, but sadly it wasn't my place to tell him as much. Weeks passed and I decided to head over to my brother's house to check up on him. Just as before, he wasn't home and Claire was. When she answered the door, I noticed instantly that she had a black eye. I was beyond furious. "Claire! Did my brother do that to you? Tell me the truth."
Yes. Yes, he did. But what am I supposed to do? It's not like anyone else would want to date or marry me.
Oh, that's just crazy talk. I bet there are millions of men out there that would see you for the beautiful, smart, and funny woman that you are, and wouldn't abuse you like my brother is. I could see that she was entertaining my idea, although what I didn't notice was that she was looking at me with a little desire in her eyes.
Like who? Who would be interested in me?
Well, like someone like me, for example. Our eyes suddenly locked, and we looked deeply at one another, and before either of us knew what was happening, we were kissing each other. And one thing led to another, and we ended up sleeping together. We both knew it was a mistake, but both of us were a better match than my brother and her. However, I just left and went home and tried my best to put what happened between us at the back of my mind. A couple months passed, and Tyler and Claire came over to visit my parents and I, and as soon as they came into the house, Tyler announced that Claire was pregnant. It wasn't even in an excited tone, but rather a very bored and rather displeased one. I could tell that Claire was less than happy with the way he was acting, but I definitely didn't expect what would happen next.
Mom and Dad. Claire is pregnant. This is wonderful news. Finally, a grandchild in the family and our favorite son will be the father. We need to celebrate.
Oh, yes. Oh, Tyler, we are so happy for you. We have done such a wonderful job raising you, and this just confirms that we invested all our effort into a son worthy of carrying our family name to another generation.
I don't think you have enough room in that apartment of yours, which means you should really move in here.
That's a great idea. Jared, that means that you need to move out right away so that Tyler can move in. That way we can take care of you and the new baby as well.
I could tell that Claire was astonished at the way my parents were treated Tyler and I. The amount of praise he was getting and the way that my parents were just throwing me out surprised her. Of course, it was hardly a surprise for me. Thankfully, I had saved up enough to get my own place and was already planning on moving out shortly anyways. But they didn't know that, and so they're just throwing me out stung.
How can you people treat Jared like this? Has it always been like this?
Yes, it has, but it's okay, Claire. It's nothing new to me.
But it's wrong. And you didn't raise Tyler to be a good son. In fact, you raised a completely selfish and abusive asshole. He not only hits me whenever he gets annoyed or angry, but he has cheated on me with at least 6 different women that I know of, and probably more that I don't. Not only that, but he's too stupid to realize that the baby isn't even his. As soon as I found out that you were cheating on me with so many women, I stopped having sex with you and got myself tested to make sure you hadn't given me a disease. Thankfully, the test came back clean.
Wait a minute. If the baby isn't Tyler's, then whose is it?
It's Jared's baby, the one son that you didn't raise but turned out to be a decent and good man.
Everyone, including me, was shocked. However, while everyone else was angry and mortified, I was elated. Here was this beautiful and intelligent woman singing my praises, and to top it all off, she just announced that she was carrying my child. I had to stop myself from proposing to her right on the spot. The second that the shock wore off, Tyler lunged at me and tried to beat me up, but I was no longer just a weak boy, and while he had gotten himself an office job, I had gotten a job in a factory and was in much better shape. It didn't take much for me to overpower him and to punch him so hard that it knocked him unconscious. During the scuffle, Claire ran out of the house in tears. After the fight ended, I knew that my parents would kick me out anyways after that, so I went straight to my room and packed all of my belongings up and left. It took me a week before I found myself somewhere to live, and shortly after that I got a call from Claire saying that she wanted to meet up for coffee. During our meetup, she told me that she wanted to keep the child and wanted to know if I would be interested in dating her as well. We both knew it would be awkward, but I was more than willing to give it a try. After that fight with my brother, he went off the deep end and began sleeping with as many women as he could. Not only that, but he has also since started using drugs as well, which have caused him to have several run-ins with the police. So much so that my parents, who have been funding his legal battles, are on the verge of losing their house just to keep bailing him out. Which serves them right. As for Tyler himself, not only has he been in and out of jail, but I have heard that he has gotten so many sexually transmitted diseases that his health is constantly poor. As if that wasn't bad enough, he now also walks with the aid of a cane, because one of the women he slept with had a jealous husband who found out that Tyler had slept with his wife and shot Tyler. The bullet shattered Tyler's hip, and now he has no balance without his cane. As for Claire and I, we did start dating, and it didn't take long before we realized that we were indeed perfect for one another. Our son was born a little while ago, and not long after that we got engaged, and our wedding will be next year. We rarely talk to my parents or Tyler anymore, and honestly, both of us are okay with that. Neither of us really want to get tangled up with all their drama. It's bad enough that our relationship started off because of such drama. So what do you think? I know that what we did was wrong, but can you honestly say that it was that bad? So long as you are living in our house, you will obey us and get a job and give us your paycheck. We will of course start giving you an allowance from it, so long as George has everything that he will need.
That isn't fair. Why does he get everything handed to him?
It's part of the privileges of being born first and a male.
We're twins though, and I have just as much potential.
You don't make me laugh.
Then prepare to laugh, you jackass, because I was accepted into medical school. Hi there, my name is Megan, and I'm in a bit of a difficult situation, and I would love to get your opinion on what I should have done differently. For starters, I have struggled all my life for any sort of recognition. My brother and I are twins, and even though I was born first, he was always given more attention. As I grew up, I realized that it was entirely because he was a male. My parents just saw me as inherently weaker just because I was born a girl. They never gave me a chance to prove that I was smart, and that I would amount to anything. My parents always just assumed that since I was a girl that I would disappoint them. My brother's name is George, and he was always spoiled. My parents would hire expensive tutors to help him get the best grades possible, and would hire coaches to help him perfect how to play various sports. Honestly, they signed him up for so many things that, looking back now, I wondered why he didn't have a nervous breakdown. But at the time, I was jealous. To me, it just looked like they were ignoring me and giving all their attention and love to him. It made me so furious at them.
Okay, so George, your piano practice is at 3, and your track and field coach will pick you up from practice and train you until 7 tonight. So make sure that you bring a snack so you don't pass out again.
Yes, Mom?
Hey, I would love to learn piano. Can I take lessons as well?
You? Are you kidding? Why on earth would we waste money on a loser like you? Megan, The only thing you will ever be good for is marrying a rich man and giving him lots of babies. But I have no doubt that you will probably screw that up too somehow.
Mom? Why would you say that?
It's just reality, Megan. Your brother has way more potential than you do. Now stop wasting my time.
It was infuriating, and at the time I hated my brother for it, even though it wasn't really his fault. Sadly, my father was even worse. And once my brother and I became teenagers, we were even given different food too. Our parents would spend lots of money on organic fruits and vegetables for my brother, along with steak and the best cuts of meat, whereas I was told to eat frozen dinners, which were terrible. Every meal, I would stare at my brother and watch him shovel expensive meals down his throat while I ate frozen dinners that cost a fraction of what he ate. Why does George get to eat so well and I have to eat this flavorless garbage?
We've been over this, Megan. George needs the best nutrition possible so that he can maintain his muscle mass and do well in sports. You don't play anything, and to be honest, you should probably eat less so that you don't become any fatter than you already are.
It was such a load of crap. I was actually the ideal weight, but that didn't stop their words from hurting my feelings. George, to his credit, kept silent. It would have been nice if he had stepped up to defend me, but either he didn't care or that he was afraid to. Either way, I was just as furious with him as I was with my parents, who were monsters. At any rate, there really wasn't much I could do. But then my dad broke his leg, and while we were in the hospital, I saw how the doctors and nurses cared for him, and I knew that that was what I wanted to do with my life. Even though my family treated me like a complete loser, I wanted to help make other people's lives better by helping them in their time of need. It was hard going, of course, because my parents would never in a million years pay for me to go to school. So I got a part-time job in secret and started saving money. I knew that I would have to rely on scholarships and to get a student loan, but it would all be worth it. Finally, when I graduated from high school, I applied to medical school and was accepted. I was even given a scholarship that would cover a large portion of my expenses and even included a dorm room as well. It was then that things really took a hard turn for me, though.
Okay, so the two of you have finally graduated from high school, which means it's time for George to go away for school. Megan, that means that you can't slack off anymore. It's time for you to get a job so that you can help pay for your brother's schooling.
Why would I do that? Can't he get a job and help himself? Why can't you guys pay for it on your own?
Don't be so selfish, Megan. If you help George now, he might even take pity on you later in life and make sure that you don't end up living on the streets. So long as you are living in our house, you will obey us and get a job and give us your paycheck. We will, of course, start giving you an allowance from it, so long as George has everything that he will need.
That isn't fair. Why does he get everything handed to him?
It's part of the privileges of being born first and a male.
We're twins, though, and I have just as much potential.
You don't make me laugh.
Then prepare to laugh, you jackass, because I was accepted into medical school.
How dare you speak to your father that way? And with what money do you plan to use to pay for this school?
I've had a part-time job for years, plus I have a scholarship to help out as well.
So you have money already, and you think you can just be selfish and use it for yourself?
I've worked hard for it. It's my money to decide what to do with it.
Megan, if you go to that school, then you are never welcome back here.
To be honest, that was my plan to begin with. I knew it would be hard, but I had no intentions of ever going back home after I went to college. The years studying to become a doctor were very hard, but in the end, it was all worth it. I made friends in school that became roommates later until I could afford a place on my own. The holidays hurt and were a bit depressing since I was all on my own. But it was worth it to know that I had made something of myself and that I was making a difference in the world. The years passed and I started to really make a name for myself at the hospital that I was working for, when suddenly I got a call one day saying that someone was in the emergency room and was asking for me. When I went down, I saw that it was George, and he did not look very well. Hey, George, what are you doing here?
Hey, Megan. Listen, I know that I have no right to ask this of you, but can you please help me? I'm here because I overdosed. Please, I need your help to get clean and away from Mom and Dad.
My heart was breaking for him, and even though I didn't know if it was a good idea or not, I chose to help him. Yes, I will help you. But why are you here, and why do you want to get away from Mom and Dad?
Well, I got injured while playing sports, and rather than taking time to heal, Mom and Dad started giving me painkillers to make me numb so that I could keep playing. It didn't take long before I started needing the pills more and more, and I got addicted. They knew this, and so they used them to control me. Whenever they wanted me to do something, they would threaten to cut me off if I didn't do as I was told. Please, Megan, I really need to get help. I can't keep living like this.
I promised that I would help him, and I brought him to my house and gave him some new clothes and a hot meal. He was incredibly grateful, and the next day when I was at work, he spent the entire day cleaning my house and even made us dinner. It was incredibly unexpected, and considering how he was still under the weather, it was incredibly sweet of him to do so. For weeks, he kept doing things like that. He even began repairing little things around the house that I had neglected. I told him that he didn't have to, but he said that it helped him to keep busy. Around that time, I helped him sign up for a rehab program and became his sponsor. It was a difficult journey for him, but with my help, he stayed clean, and I even helped him get a job as a contractor. He had shown that he was very skilled at house construction and repairs. It made him happy to work repairing people's houses, and it kept him occupied and drug-free. However, one day I came home to find my parents on my front porch banging on the door.
George, let us in. You've had enough of a vacation, but it's time to come home.
Yes, George. We need you to make money to help us. You wouldn't want us to starve, would you?
We have your medication. Surely you need a fix by now.
What is wrong with you people? He finally got clean, and here you are trying to use his addiction to manipulate him. Have you no shame?
Oh, look, it's the loser that is trying to steal our son from us.
Just mind your own business, idiot. George, you come out right now.
I was so angry that I pushed them both off my porch, and they landed in a muddy puddle. They had grown rather frail, and it was very easy to overpower them. With them out of the way, I unlocked the door and slipped inside before locking it again. George was inside and was in tears. I finally realized that he had been traumatized by our parents just as much, if not worse than myself. I held him and comforted him while I called the police and had our parents dragged away. I then applied to get a restraining order put on them so that they couldn't come anywhere near my home, which of course they broke, resulting in them serving jail time. After that, they stopped harassing us for some time. I knew deep down that they wouldn't give up, but I also knew that I needed to protect my brother from them. And so it went on like that for a couple years, until I heard that my parents had been forced to move into an assisted living home. Without my brother giving them money, though, they were forced to move into one that they could afford. And I knew that it was a terrible place. The staff weren't medical professionals and treated their patients like animals. They lasted a few years there before they passed away. Neither George or myself went to either of their funerals, but I am happy to say that we are doing great. It's so amazing to have my brother in my life, and although we have a small family, we are incredibly happy and spend all the holidays with each other. The only thing I regret is all the years that our parents kept us apart. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel.